All right, welcome in everybody to another edition of Swarm Talk brought to you by Section 103. As always, we welcome you in. It has been an action-packed day for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, so lock it in. Talk with us here on the stream as we get ready to dive in to a lot of breaking news. Buster Faulkner gone to Florida. Pete Thamel first on that report. On three, Chris Lowe confirming that a little bit later. A lot of news in that direction that we're going to talk about. What's the health of this OC job? What is the enticement level to come be the offensive coordinator for Georgia Tech? Back-to-back years now that Brent Key is going to have to replace the coordinator spot. Going to be interesting. And does that mean that some rumors that he might want to replace Blake Gideon at DC? Is that even real? And why this could impact any decision that you want to make on the defensive side of the football. We're going to also take a look at that early signing class as well. I know a lot of Tech fans not necessarily excited about it. So make sure you get your questions in. Make sure you hang out with us. Section 103, a ton of other sponsors with us here tonight. Let's rock and roll. Swarm Talk brought to you by the Crowded Booth in Section 103.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.
We're hanging out here on a Thursday evening. No more game week for the Jackets, but it doesn't mean we can't talk football. Really busy time of the year as we get ready to rock and roll with the offseason. Georgia Tech awaiting that bowl game. Will it be the Pop-Tart Bowl? We'll see. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. Continue to follow us on all those platforms. Another year of doing this show, another tremendous opportunity for growth that we've had, and we appreciate every single one watching there as well. A lot of stuff to talk about tonight. So let's dive in. Let's talk about it. And let's get into this. Buster Faulkner leaves to go to Florida. Let's identify what this is. This is straight up an opportunity to get himself more notoriety, an opportunity to play on a bigger stage, to see an uptick in competition for if his ultimate goal is to be a head coach at the highest level in college football. This is the route that he decided to take. Now, talking with people obviously can confirm that he was involved in the conversation to be the Memphis head coach. He was involved in conversations to be an offensive coordinator elsewhere. Faulkner has told people around him, and the consensus around people around him is that this is a guy who wanted to make sure that wherever he went, if he was going to leave Georgia Tech, it had to be the right fit. Brand new staff down there in Gainesville. John Sumrall, a defensive-minded head coach, brings in Brad White, the former DC at Kentucky, to be his coordinator. And then he brings in Buster Faulkner. Now, first off, for the Florida fans that want to be able to maybe they tune into the show and what we think about it here, I'll just kind of start off with this. Tremendous hire for Florida. I think that John Sumrall, and I've been very complimentary of what he has done during his time at Tulane. I think this is a tremendous staff. He's surrounding himself with guys with Power 4 experience, with SEC experience as well. Don't forget, Faulkner was heavily involved in the play calling and the play design, the game plan design, I should say, at Georgia when he was an analyst there under Todd Monken. So let's dive into it. Let's talk about it. So that's what this is. Look. This show's known for certain things. The one thing we're going to be known for is pretty much calling it how it is. This is a opportunity. This is an upward step in the coaching ladder for him. It's not a knock on what Georgia Tech is. It's the landscape of the sport. Florida is one of the premier, head coaching jobs if you can go get it. In terms of the staff opportunities that you can have from there. Look, Buster Faulkner puts in 2 to 3 years. Now he doesn't have to necessarily maybe go be a Group of 5 head coach. Maybe he jumps right to the Power 4 head coach. This was an opportunity that he had been. Over the past 2 years, I will say he had been looking at, he had been evaluating, he had been just overall, looking for the right fit, and John Sumrall in Florida have given him this. And also, too, you got to keep in mind, there's a lot of conversation about his son graduating, everything like that. And that is why this it makes sense. The timing matches up with this. So that's one reason why I know that Faulkner left. This was something that matched up with the timeline of him at Georgia Tech, the timeline of his family, and it works for him, and that's great. The second part of this is an opportunity to, leave a situation that he feels more comfortable walking into maybe than where he was. We'll leave it at that. just making phone calls this evening with people in and around. This is an opportunity for Faulkner to leave his current situation to where he feels like he can maybe have a little bit more creative freedom, and two, can have also a bigger stage. So it's a bigger stage, more creative opportunities. And look, you're going to be able to play with higher level athletes. You're going to be able to play with a Florida roster that, we haven't seen what the portal is going to do, but good God. I mean, look, I watched that team in person this year. They had a lot of things going wrong. It's not for a lack of talent. DJ Lagway is one of the more naturally gifted, talented quarterbacks in the country. Didn't put it together this year. Billy Napier got fired because he wouldn't hand over the reins to an OC. Florida's got a lot of weapons, especially on the outside, man. Their weapons on the outside are ridiculous. So it is just one of those things where you kind of go there and you see what happens. So this is a good hire for Florida. It sucks for Georgia Tech. It is what it is. It's the nature of the beast. It's the nature of the game that you're rocking with, you're rolling with here in 2025. Now, where does this hurt you? It hurts you in a recruiting piece. It does hurt you as you've got now a month, or I should say less than a month, till the transfer portal opens on January the 2nd. Now, we all know that conversations are going to be had well before then. Georgia Tech's going to have to move pretty quickly on this. So I think just in terms of what we're talking about here for Georgia Tech, you've got to be able to move quickly from this. But this is a loss. Let's don't twist this in any other way. Let's don't twist it as, it's a step down or it's a lateral move. No, this is a step up on the rung. Georgia Tech has promoted a guy that up the rung of the ladder who did a good job in his time in Atlanta, elevated this offense, gave them an immediate identity. And the best thing you can do is to wish him well on his way, because I think in turn it can take this job and say, okay, look what you can do here. And that to me is where it goes. So that is essentially the Buster Faulkner, the Buster Faulkner to Florida, right? There you go. He goes to Florida. I like it. I think it's a nice move for him in terms of the Florida side of things. But for Georgia Tech, it does suck because he gave your offense an identity. I mean, guys, let's just be real. We remember what was happening in 2019. Right, like 2020, 2021. I mean, that was abysmal offensively what they were doing. They had no identity. You were lucking in the ability to go move the ball down the field. Like you had to find some type of luck to try to go build a drive, sustain a drive. Buster Faulkner gave you continuity. Now, can you nitpick things? Of course, you can always nitpick some things. You can always do that. One, you don't know the full scope of the situation. You don't know what the personnel groupings are. It's really hard for us on the outside to be able to dictate or have an accurate reflection without talking to people on the inside. But talking with somebody who is close to Buster Faulkner, this was a guy that his name had been in the coaching circles. It's not a massive surprise, I'm told, to that staff that he would be that he was going to be an option here. So he moves on. He's a big loss. This wasn't a lateral move. This is an upward move for him, and you got to hope it benefits you there in the long run. Now let's talk a little bit about the stock or the status of the OC job at Georgia Tech. Before this, and let's just be real, you had Dave Patno, which we just had a collective little baby throw up in the mouths of Georgia Tech fans as they heard me say that name. You had Dave Patno, and you had Chip Long, and there was some belief that maybe Chip Long could do some things, and it just didn't end up happening. And offensively, you wandered in the wilderness for several years. And it wasn't, you had some talent, like you had some skill position talent. Well, you enter in Brent Key and you bring over Buster Faulkner, who at the time was an analyst. The status of the offensive coordinator job was really, I think at that time, and I think it spoke to what the hire was, of a prove it opportunity. If you think you can be a Power 4 coordinator, come here. This is a proving ground for you to do it. And look, Buster Faulkner did that very well. Like I mentioned earlier, he gave this offense an identity. Big part of, Haynes King's ability to be the player that he was during his time and to, find spots and pieces in this offense that made a lot of sense. Jamal Haynes being one of those, Malik Rutherford over the years, the utilization of different players. He was just really, really good at that. And so Buster Faulkner's rise in Atlanta, in turn, I think makes this offensive coordinator job attractive. Now, to what level? Because now you're sitting in here with a coaching carousel that is completely nuts and crazy, But it's just one of those things that when you look at it now, you got to be real yourself. Hey, the Georgia Tech offensive coordinator just took an SEC job If I go there, I can spend a couple of years there, build myself into something, and then I can make the move on. And look, that's not an indictment. That's how the coaching world works. Now, look, Brent Key, maybe he's not going anywhere because he's a Georgia Tech guy, and just obviously just signed the extension, and you ponied up and made him one of the higher paid coaches in the ACC. That's fine. But for guys who are coordinators who have aspirations, maybe they want to go be a head coach. Maybe they have NFL aspirations, like a Tyler Santucci had the opportunity to do last year. It's not an indictment on Georgia Tech's program. It's more of just looking at this as an opportunity to take advantage of and to get eyes on. Because look, anyone who's watched Georgia Tech's offense for the past several years, and especially before November of this year, knows that it was one of the more prolific units in the country, and what they were able to do, the way they removed the ball, the way that they schemed and layered things. If you can do that, if you can take the baton at Georgia Tech and do some things, it makes it a very attractive job. So who is going to be the next guy? Look, we're working on a hot board right now. There's some names. Obviously, Chris Winke's name's been thrown out. A dark horse would be interesting because I don't think he's ever really called plays. And it would appeal to the fan base, but an absolute dark horse way down the line, a guy like Tashard Choice, would he be interested in coming back to the college level? I think that's one thing you got to realize too, with how the college game has changed. Would that be there? But I just think in general, you're going to have suitors, right? And listen, people are going to hear those two names and say, oh, Bryce said that this is this and this is that. Two complete names you're going to throw it out there. Obviously, Chris Winke's name is going to come up in conversations. Tashard Choice, because he is an alum, obviously, and has been well respected as a recruiter. Would he be ready? And is Georgia Tech, seeing that in him that he could make the jump? I don't know. It's just a name we're absolutely throwing out there. Hot boards are loosely based off intel. I will tell you this. So the one thing I will say about this job, and I believe this to be true, is that I think that you're sitting on maybe a worry about who's next. And Brent Key's already kind of shown you where he wants to go with this. When he sits down with Ryan Alpert and he sits down with Dr. Cabrera and they look at, okay, the funds we need to allocate to this position and what we need to do and how attractive, what's the market rate, when they do take in, hopefully, outside information to look at what the market value for certain guys are. They already went the young guy route last year with Blake Gideon. And look, it had some growing pains. Obviously, this defense wasn't what they wanted to be there towards down the stretch, especially when they played some more prolific offenses. But the biggest thing in terms of what I can say to this is the worry of a retread. I think Brent Key's kind of erased that. And maybe there is a veteran guy that makes a lot of sense to come in. I don't know. Maybe that I don't have that guy off the top of my head. But I do think that there is a sense with this job, you went and got Blake Gideon from Texas, a positional coach at Texas at a championship level program that had been in the playoff. You went and got that. You brought it in. You had some growing pains. There it is. Do you look the same route? Do you go to the group of 5 route and say, hey, who's the hot shot coordinator that we want to bring in and do this? Or you go to an established Power 4 program like you did with Blake Gideon last year and like you did with Buster Faulkner a couple of years ago and say, hey, let's go get a guy that is established in his role but is looking to call plays, right? That to me is something that I would be interested to see, and I believe the route that they will go in this. Because like I said, a lot of people worried about the retread option. There was some interest from retreads in terms, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but guys that have maybe cycled through a couple of times throughout different job opportunities. There is a sense of that might have been the case last year. And then Brent Key goes and obviously gets an up-and-comer in Blake Gideon. Do you do it again? We'll see. Now, does that mean that the offense is going to be able to flow freely? I don't know. There might be some growing pains. You got to be willing to do that. It'll be interesting to see kind of what they do here. I see Ultima says Jordan Davis from North Texas. I'm assuming that's the offensive coordinator. The problem with that, and Ultima, you can completely correct me if I'm wrong here. Eric Morris is now at Oklahoma State. Does he follow? I have no idea. I have not looked at it. It is, interesting there too. Dr. Bob says Joe Craddock at Tulane, but he's sort of up and down. Sometimes he's brilliant. Other times he's way too vanilla. I mean, look, definitely an option. I mean, could you go get the guy that Sumrall had at Tulane? It would be interesting. J-Dub says George Godsey, but I highly doubt it. Not highly, I apologize. David says Team Drew Chronic. You know me, I'm a little biased. I love me some Drew Cronick up there at the Naval Academy. And look, by the way, Navy's not running the triple option. One, I watched that offense and went to practices for 3 years at Mercer. I know exactly what they what they looked like. So it's a variation, but it's not a straight up triple option. And I think it could be utilized, especially in the ACC. But bottom line here, the status of this OC job at Georgia Tech, I don't think it's. Does it suck that Buster Faulkner left? Yeah, it's not great. You're coming off a season where you had a lot of success, and now you feel like you're being the team that's being picked on. I understand that, but I do think this offensive coordinator job and this opportunity does have some shine to it, and I think it's going to be a sought after position. Now, look, you're looking across the country. If Colin Klein is indeed the guy at Kansas State to lead that program, you have to start going down the pecking order of where are the better jobs, right? So Texas A&M's OC is going to be viewed as the better job. Ole Miss's OC is going to be viewed as the better job. You know, you look across elsewhere. Kentucky hired Joe Sloan today to be the OC up there. That job is filled. Florida's job is filled. I haven't seen what Ryan Silverfield has done at Arkansas. Could some more opportunities come open? Penn State is obviously still needs a head coach, but it looks like Matt Campbell might be trending that way. The OC job there, you know, it'll be interesting to see where they go with this. So there's a lot of options to look at. There's a lot of things how this affects the portal and recruiting. Now, you have to ask yourself the question of how does it affect the portal and recruiting? Before we do that, I want to talk about our good friends over at Section 103. If you haven't already, make sure you get your holiday gifts in. It's a fantastic opportunity for you to get someone that you love that special gift. Section 103 makes quality stuff. It's more comfortable than the club seats. They do a fantastic job. Starting off as that Georgia Tech brand, you can use code TCB10 for the coach hoodie, for some amazing hats, some awesome polos. Let them know that we sent you over there. Make sure you use that code TCB10 for 10% off your order today. Listen, so we talk about this. This to me, and Nico asked this real quick. You can get some questions in. If you really want to get your questions in, make sure you do that super chat. I'll definitely see them. Nico says, would you consider the Arkansas OC to be better than Georgia Tech? Ooh, probably not. Probably not. No. I would rather have the Georgia Tech offensive coordinator job than the Arkansas. But that also shows what I feel about the Arkansas job in general, and the head coaching job. So there's that. How does this affect the portal, right? And how does this affect recruiting? So let's talk about that real quick. We're going to type in another banner. It's me solo tonight. The recruiting effect of all of this. Now, I also got to say this. I don't, WTJ, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to read out your whole name, but we appreciate you. The Penn State gaslighting is going to be hilarious when they try to pretend they didn't botch this coaching search. It has been wild. Did see the reports that Matt Campbell might be an option. We'll see how that plays out. How does this affect recruiting? Okay, so let's talk about this, because I think that when you sit in, and I hate this new feature, by the way, that StreamYard's done. We love StreamYard. They can be frustrating at times. The recruiting effect of this role. From a high school standpoint, and this is just across the board, you have to understand that if you have guys that are, one, there are guys that commit to the school. There are also guys that commit to the coach and commit to the program and commit to, their positional coach or their main recruiter. The recruiting effect of this is that you could see some signees, and I'm not saying anybody in general, but these are the guys that, make the biggest relationships. Signees can now jump into the portal as soon as January 2nd opens. So if there's a player, and I'm not saying this is happening or I'm not speculating, I'm just saying if in a hypothetical sense there's a player that signed during this 3-day period that was said, I'm going there because Buster Faulkner is there, if that happens, then they can enter the portal on January the 2nd. That's a hypothetical thing that can happen. So please hear me when I say that. I'm not saying it's happening. That's just like how some things work. Like Julian Sayin did that. When Nick Saban left Alabama, he transfers up to, in the winter cycle, I should say. They only have one, so you have, 28 days to do this thing, to figure it out. I think it's a 2-week period, January 2nd to the 16th. when you look at how this affects the re-recruiting of your roster, that is where things are going to be interesting. Look, I think I've said this multiple times in our Discord. Feel free to join and come in and hang out with us and talk with us. Isaiah Canyon is going to be a tough one to keep. He is going to be a tough one to keep just because of the value that he provides. And look, big-bodied receivers that have nice seasons are going to be a hot commodity on the open market. I'm not saying he's going to test it. I'm not saying he's ever going to file the paperwork. There will be, if you want to call it tampering, there will be people reaching out to his representation. We'll just put it at that. That's going to be a hard sell to keep. And so I think that's important to get. When you lost Buster Faulkner now, that's got to be the first order of business to re-recruit this roster. Isaiah Canyon strikes as that. Aaron Philo strikes as a guy that obviously you were able to convince last year to re-up. Didn't play the Georgia game because he wanted a red shirt. That was he and his family's decision they wanted to do. Key and them honored that and gave him the opportunity to be here this past year. He had a couple spot opportunities for you this year. He, by all indications, is going to be the guy, and he'll battle with Graham Knowles for that. But look, Aaron Philo is going to be, once again, going to be a guy that teams try to go look at and try to go get. It's just a fact of the matter with how the portal works. So it doesn't mean that people are going to leave, but it does mean that some of these exit meetings or some of these meetings in general between representation and the front office staff of Georgia Tech, and I mean the front office football staff, your GMs and your player personnel people, it does mean that those conversations, things are going to be asked, hey, recruiting wise, what can you tell us? What can you give us? Coaching staff wise, what can you tell us? What are you going to give us? Where are you looking at to fill? What are you looking for? Is the offense going to change schematically? Like there's a lot of different things, questions that are going to have to be answered for this staff. So that's an interesting thing, I think, in terms of where some of the things that these agents and the representation is going to ask of players who might be courted in the portal. And heck, there might be some players that, were already wanting to enter the portal and, this may push them over the edge. So we'll see what happens with that. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see there as well. Joey says, I was told by someone close to Canada that a lot of schools have already reached out. Wouldn't surprise me. Would not surprise me there as well. So let's take a quick break. When we do, I got to talk about my friends over at. Oh, they're not over there. Yes, they are. No, they're not over there. MacArthur Woodworks. Make sure you check out our friends over at MacArthur Woodworks. I'm going to show you their site because it is the holiday season, and you need to make sure that you are getting a gift that is for somebody special. But it's also something that people actually want, and that's what MacArthur Woodworks can provide for you. I always talk about what a great job that they do, what a fantastic job that they do in terms of the craftsmanship, in terms of the care that they do into each one of their products. And I want to show you a little bit about what makes them so special. We've all seen this, but take a look at some of their boards. This is the resin charcuterie board. It is a phenomenal item right here. You can get it in different sizes, that 18 by 8 or the 20 by 12. You've got a black walnut, a nice red cedar pattern. Look at some of these options right here. We can just go through them, I'm pretty sure. Maybe too big of a picture, so we can't do that. But some of the resin boards they have there, they have some ocean custom boards. A favorite, my wife really liked this one, the milk and cookies board. It's a black walnut with a white epoxy in there. It's a phenomenal gift, and it's something that's really going to matter too. That's what I think is the big thing. As you take a look right here at some of the items they've got, they're already sold out of a couple. They've got some tables as well. You can get a live edge table. You can go to this screen right here. Right here, they do a fantastic job. MacArthur Woodworks, you put in your contact information. If you have a company name, number, they will reach back out to you, that personal experience to make sure you get the exact order that you want. Cannot compliment them enough. They do a fantastic job. So appreciate them for everything that they do in our show each and every single week. MacArthur Woodworks. Use code TCB10 for 10% off your order today. Tell them Bryce sent you. Okay, let's talk real quick. Let's go early signing day haul. I know a lot of people frustrated with this. A lot of people mad. Too many people are not, too many people are reading the tea leaves of what this might mean. Look, just keep it real right here with you. This class isn't going to blow anyone away from a star ranking standpoint, but this is where you have to trust the evals, right? Alex Mathis and this crew, you've got to trust the evals. The one thing that I will really compliment, and I've really thought has been a very good job, is the job done by Blake Gideon, Corey Peoples, and Kobe Jones. the back end of this defense from a roster standpoint, like I'm going to read you out something right here. Like I think that is where this group has improved the most in terms of a depth perspective. Now, look, you've got some work to do at linebacker. You have some serious work to do at defensive line. But I want to read this to you right here, something I was having a conversation with here as well. At cornerback, you've got Daquan White, Zachary Toby, John Mitchell, Christian Pritchett. And then you've obviously got a lot of young guys there. You've got Hill at the nickel spot. Tay Harris can play a little bit of nickel as well. That's where he practiced heading into the Georgia game. The reason we saw a lot of Phoenix Felton, who has come on nicely this season. You've got Savion Riley. Then you talk about some of the young guys that they've gotten, right? And you start with Travis Stevenson in that secondary. You start talking about some of the other names that they've been able to get. Dalen Pinson, I love what they were doing with those. To me, and what they've seen out of this has been a phenomenal job by the back end of this. The back end coaches on this defense, I think, have done a good job of stacking talent. Now it's got to come. Some of these guys got to develop. 2026 could be a year where you see, names like Phoenix Felton get a longer run. Names like Tay Harris, Christian Pritchett on the outside. I just think there's an opportunity for growth. There's a lot of raw, untapped talent there. Can you mold it into being ACC starter level over a consistent period of time? They've done a good job of tackling that in terms of the recruiting sphere. Shout out to Corey People. Shout out to Kobe Jones. Shout out to Blake Gideon in that factor. I think they've done a great job. Now, where the problem is with this is that the other two levels of the defense have just kind of been meh. The linebacker room isn't terrible. Jeff Dover, this is intriguing. I don't know, Jeff. It's intriguing, though. Jeff, by the way, Trey Lamb is the head coach at Tulsa. He spent time as the head coach at ETSU. Spent time as the head coach at Gardner-Webb as well. His father, Bobby Lamb, used to be the longtime head coach for the Mercer Bears when they reinstated their program. And I believe he's currently the head coach at Anderson University up there in Anderson, South Carolina, Division II school. Okay, back to it. The safety room I love. The cornerback room I'm fine with. They're going to add some veterans in the portal. They're going to be fine there. I've listed one name in the Discord today that I do believe and can confidently believe that they will attempt to go after there as well. Some are all in. Make sure you subscribe. We're going to get to your question here in a little bit. So the early signing day haul in general for Georgia Tech has been something that I think has been a little bit frustrating for people. But what's left, right? Look, you got some edge rushers. You're going to have to develop some of these guys, and that's what's always going to happen at Georgia Tech. You're just not going to be a team that's going to rely on the logo to be able to go get 4 and 5 stars and compile top 10 class. Now, I do hear fans that I hear you out when you're upset or frustrated about the lack that, hey, you're not in the top 30 or top 25. I get that. As a fan, you should want to do that, and I commend you on that. You should want to be the best possible. It has been a little disappointing. You've got to trust the evaluation process. You've got to trust the development on staff. Once that starts to take place, once you have some of these 3 stars that maybe you develop into an all-conference player, there is your landing mark. There is your pitch to go back into high schools and say, hey, we can turn you into this. Or if you're a 4-star, hey, look what we do with this guy. Imagine what we can do with you, and you can be the focal point of our move. So that to me is something that I think is just kind of a blanket statement that covers this early signing day haul for me. I like some of the guys they have. I like the twins on the offensive line. I like that a couple of other players that they've been able to go get. We'll see. Obviously, there's not the big time addition or the big battle. I'll talk on that in a second that they've won. But we'll see what happens here as well. Okay, early signing day haul. We can't leave the show, and some are all in. We're going to get to you here. I appreciate you. Subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends about us. We talk more than just Georgia Tech on here. We talk college football in general. This is our Georgia Tech show on the channel. The Deuce Geralds situation. Now, look, I'm just going to keep it real with you. This is obviously a situation that I'm monitoring very closely on both sides now, right? Let's just lay it out for you essentially what has happened here. Deuce Geralds is a native of the Baton Rouge, Louisiana area. His dad's from Scotlandville. He's been a guy that his Frank Wilson, who is the current running backs coach and assistant head coach. Nico, I'll get to that in a second. Cole Bergeron, a guy that I've seen play before. I like him. I think he'd be a nice fit at Georgia Tech. But going back to Deuce Geralds, let's make this here because I want to make sure we get this. Where is Georgia Tech in this Deuce Geralds conversation? So the Deuce Geralds debate. Let's rock and roll with it right here. You have a coach in Frank Wilson who recruited Deuce's dad, Davern Geralds the first, I guess we can call him, because Deuce is the second. The Deuce Geralds debate here. So Deuce has been a LSU commit for some time. Ole Miss battled with him. He commits to LSU. Like I said, the current running backs coach recruited his dad when he was at Ole Miss. Okay? Recruited his dad when he was at Ole Miss. When you look at what has happened over the past 24 to 48 hours, this isn't an opinion. This is absolute fact of what's happening here. Georgia Tech missed on several defensive line targets. Tico Crittington being one of those guys. They missed. It's what it is. It's not a shot. It's not throwing shade. It's not even my words. It's what has happened. It's what I was told by people there. They missed. They have now decided to pull and allocate their funds to make a late push for Deuce Geralds. Now, where do we sit in that? What does that conversation take place? This is a 3-horse race, and I talked with someone an hour and a half ago on this. Georgia Tech, obviously the in-state school, and I use that loosely because Deuce is from Baton Rouge area, but he's obviously at Collins Hill there in Atlanta area now. Georgia Tech is making a push for this, and the money is serious. The money is a very serious number that they are putting towards. Geralds is conflicted on what to do because of his longtime recruiter down at LSU leaves, and there's rumors of him leaving down here. It's going to open the door for someone else to jump in the mix. And that's what has happened. Georgia Tech saw the door cracked open along with their financial war chest, and it's been good for them. Like, that's what they've been able to do. Ole Miss, led by Pete Golding, has always been in the mix for Deuce Geralds, and now they're making their late push. Now, Deuce was supposed to come on my show last night and talk. Obviously, they pushed the commitment back. We'll see if that's an opportunity to still get, still get him on the show. As of, and I can just going to tell you this right now, as of 8:04 Central, 9:04 Eastern, there is a belief that Georgia Tech could be on the outside looking in here. I'm not saying that's for a fact. I'm not saying that's for, I don't think they can win it. I think they are in it, but they might be team 3. Like, I think Ole Miss and LSU could be 1A, 1B right now, and I think that Georgia Tech could be 2. And I don't think the gap is that wide because I do think they've done some nice things to be able to get them. But all things considered, when you talk about development, you talk about coaching, there's a lot up in the air right now. So I'll be with you. I don't know what he's going to do. I can't tell you. The world of recruiting is crazy. I think it's crazy to say anything with a matter of a fact unless you know it and you've sourced it 3 or 4 different ways. But as of right now, the conversation I had, it seems like, and maybe they're not showing all the cards, and maybe they shouldn't. So maybe that's not something that we're even going to be led on to know. And maybe they're sourcing elsewhere that tells you that Georgia Tech is the team to beat. I don't think they're the team to beat right now. I think they've done a really good job of capturing his attention. I think it is a real push. It shouldn't be laughed at. It is a very real financial push. If Georgia Tech loses out on this, yes, it would suck because Deuce Geralds is an instant impact type of player, especially at Georgia Tech, and desperately needed on that defensive line. But we will see because, like I said, he's waiting on some word. And here's the thing too, and I mentioned this earlier. Let's play the hypothetical game and say that he commits to LSU. Frank Wilson is let go down here at LSU. Georgia Tech is still on the market because they're going to, and we'll talk portal here in a second, they're going to have to go to the portal to find some defensive line. But, it's one of those things, and No Chainsley, we'll get to you here in just a second. It's just one of those things where you kind of sit in now and it's like, hey, if that happens, that scenario I just laid out, if Frank Wilson leaves, he can go in the portal on January the 2nd and not lose eligibility. So the door wouldn't be completely closed. The point right now is Georgia Tech is making a real push for him. I've talked with multiple people on all three sides of this thing who have told me every team is a real push. The belief currently, and like I said, these things can change by the second. The belief currently is that Georgia Tech might be team two, with Ole Miss and LSU being 1A and 1B. We'll see. I think Georgia Tech is, I know they put together a nice, lucrative offer. So we will see. I don't know. I can't tell you without a shadow of a doubt what a kid's going to do. It'd be crazy for me too there as well. We might wake up tomorrow and Deuce Geralds is going to be a yellow jacket. We'll have to see. All right. Portal wise, let's talk about it real quick. I talked with someone close. They're going to have to. You're going to have to clean up big in this transfer portal. And if you were saving your money and allocating for this, because here's the line of thought, right? That maybe you were just using this recruiting class to build depth, but you were going to go after bona fide impact players in the portal. I don't hate the strategy. You better be able to have that type of money. That's the biggest thing for me. You better be able to have that type of money to be able to go and do that. So that's where that thing sits. We'll see what happens. I was told by someone I trust 45 minutes ago that said, if Georgia Tech wants to be competitive next year, they're going to have to go clean up in the portal. Guys, I don't know if we all realize how expensive it is to clean up in the portal. If you're not taking the elite of the elite, you have to hit on almost every single eval. You probably got to bat about 600, 700 in the portal to be able to do that. So we'll see what happens with it. Like I said, the defensive line room scares me, man. It just scares me because if you don't you've got to have some development, but you need some guys that have played some real snaps. And I think a lot of the fan base would be disappointed is if on paper, and luckily the games aren't played on paper, if you just get a bunch of guys that, hey, they were a reserve here, but they've now come back to, maybe they're reserve in the SEC, but they're coming back here to get more playing time. Like, I think you've got to pony up and pay for at least one real type of difference maker up front. And we'll see. I don't know. It's a little bit nerve-wracking to see. I think there's some uneasiness amongst the Georgia Tech fan base there as well. We will see what happens. But you're going to have to spend. And when I say spend, guys, like I do this for a living. Some of the numbers we're throwing out here, we're seeing in some of the real ones, it's crazy for the top of the line defensive lineman. And so, like I said, I don't have a firm idea of what Georgia Tech's walking into this portal offseason with in terms of what's in their purse. You just better get ready to empty it. And I wonder what the point of no return for certain type of things are. You might have to break away from some of the guidelines that you may have set for yourself because the 2026 team could suffer because of that. It could suffer. Nico wants me to talk about Cole Bergeron real quick. And then we're going to get to the two Florida fans questions. We'll get out of here. Cole Bergeron, I watched him in the 7-on-7 circuit. I've watched him in person play down here at St. Thomas More in Louisiana. Has the stature of a good quarterback. I think he's a solid football player. I think that, obviously he is going to be trending for this. He's trending to Georgia Tech. He told me there's a prediction going into him. LSU never truly got involved with him. Minnesota has. Purdue has. If Georgia Tech wins this battle, I think it adds just another smart player, a guy who can deliver the football with some authority, has played with some really good talent, knows how to be a point guard for you there as well. That I think I don't have anything negative to say about Cole Bergeron. I think he's a solid football player and a nice addition to the class. All right, let's get real quick. Someone all in says, as a Florida fan, how excited should I be for Buster Faulkner after watching 4 years of Billy Napier called offense? I think his sequencing and his ability to layer plays is phenomenal. I think he's a really good play caller. And I think that with some of the talent that you guys had this past year, I mean, good God, if you can keep some of these players, but knowing what they have in that class, like, I'm going to go look at this real quick because I've got to look at Florida's depth chart. I know this is steering away from the Georgia Tech sphere, but hey, we appreciate you tuning in and we appreciate you being here. The depth chart for Florida, so Sturdivant's gone. You're going to have Vernell Brown III. If you keep him, Nashawn Montgomery, Aiden Mizell. I mean, guys, y'all have some dudes, and you've got some freaky athletes on the edge. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jaden Ball's a sophomore. You keep him, Jesus. I mean, you're going to have a really – and depending on what the offensive line does, right, that'll be the biggest thing. But we'll see what happens. I like Buster Faulkner a lot. Really, really. I think he's a really, really good play caller. So shout out to you there, Summer All In. I think you got a good hire. I mentioned earlier in the show, I'm very complimentary of the staff that John Summerall's putting together. No Chains Lee says, just started from the beginning, a Florida fan that came to check out what you had to say. LL, appreciate you. Make sure you subscribe. We appreciate you, man. We don't talk just Georgia Tech. We talk college football all year long. We live in Northwest Georgia. Oh, I went to school at Berry College in Rome, Georgia. So appreciate you. Hate it for Tech because I hate Georgia, but thrilled to have him. Yeah, I think it's a great step in his career to be able to go do some things. We'll see. We'll see what it is. I think it's going to be, like I said, the athletes that Florida has. Good God, it is. It's entertaining. So we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, Jaden Ball, Buster would eat with him. Joey says this. What would okay, here's the thing. Aaron says, got to pull a Texas Tech. I don't know if you can. You can't do that because, guys, y'all got to understand. Tech has money, but you got to get a liquid, right? That's the issue here. Texas Tech just liquidated everything and said, here we go, because you've got to get the donor base to really, really care. What would the purse need to be? $15 million? Well, Joey, depends on what you're saying here. You're talking about to go win a national title? 20. You need 20 dedicated just to go build your roster. That's the biggest thing. Nico, or I don't remember his guy's name's Nico, but in Dennis, we appreciate you. Georgia Tech had Buster for 3 years. That's really all you can expect with his abilities in 2025. We'll see. I want to take one more look at that recruiting class there for Florida. Top 10 recruiting class, 19 commits. Yeah, you got Davion Gross. Good Jesus. Marquez Daniel, he signed. Hezzy Kent, who is a 6'6", 300-pound tight end, H-back. Will Griffin, who I believe leads the state of Florida, leaves it as one of the top passers in the country. Yeah, you've got a nice class. He's going to have fun there. He's going to have a lot of fun. He's going to do some really, really nice things. So we'll see what happens. A lot of big news there as well. Yeah, look, it's a crazy season. Make sure you subscribe. If you love college football, we're live in each every single week talking about it. If you're a Georgia Tech fan that comes across it, we appreciate you. Thank you for hanging out for us on the #1 Georgia Tech talk show here on the internet. And I appreciate you. I thank you so much for hopping in with us and hanging out with us here on a Thursday night, little impromptu live show. But Buster Faulkner heads to Florida. Georgia Tech is looking for an OC. We'll have much more information over at thecrowdedbooth.com about that. And then we'll also continue to do the shows right here on the YouTube channel. We appreciate you for listening on all those podcast platforms as well. Thanks so much for watching. My name is Bryce Koon. Shout out to the team for making things possible. Shout out to all those sponsors there as well. We'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The crowded booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.